Welcome back to Switch to Linux and another Distro Wars. And today, the similar trait that we are looking at is rolling distributions. And we're going to be looking at, as a user recommended, or a viewer recommended, I should say, we're going to look at Arch, which is absolutely the king of the rolling distributions, versus Debian Sid, which, of course, Debian is long-term stable. Long-term stable doesn't quite fit it. It's glacier-term stable. It moves about the speed of a melting glacier, and so it's very slow. However, there are a lot of point updates. I installed a Debian-based distribution recently to find that, wow, there's actually several packages I use that are really far up to date. And so there is absolutely some upgrading in Debian. Of course, security updates are always there, like instantly. There's a separate security channel if you ever check your security releases on Debian. But there is a channel for Debian that is called Sid, that is the unstable. So Debian has the solid stable release, and then they have a testing branch, and then an unstable branch, and then a I think the last one's called unstable. And so there are several different branches in Debian that you can use. And one of those does basically produce a Debian apt-based rolling distribution. In fact, some distributions have been based on that in the past. Deepin at one point in time was based on that. And there's a few others that are. It's basically a testing ground for what is going to be in the final release, where they can fix things back and forth. Let's go ahead and have a look at the websites though on these. So ArchLinux, of course, the purest way to do Arch is just download the little net installer and start running through the tutorials and learn how to install it with little codes here and in everything. So that's what you'd want to do to get the pure Arch. Now, as I built up my distribution for today to look at this, what we're going to be doing, I did not have the time to work with all that, so I actually used a script. There's several ways you can get either a pure or a pretty close to pure Arch on your system, and the one that I went with today is ArchFi. And the reason I used ArchFi is because it literally is nothing but a pure script. It's nothing but the Debian. Versus many of the other ones, it's mostly Debian. It's pretty much Debian, but it'll throw in a few little odds and ends here and there. Maybe you'll get better theming out of the box. You'll get a better desktop environment out of the box. A lot of different things. I wanted to go with something as pure to the form as you can get. So I downloaded Arch, and then I just ran the ArchFi script to walk through the setup for Arch. I configured this with a GNOME desktop because that's the default on Debian, and Arch didn't really have a default. And so with Debian, the approach here, you can usually grab the, I think you have the unstable version. You have your main version you can install for Debian, or you have a few other ones. Now, Sid is not quite unstable. It's like one step up from that. But what you do to run Sid is you simply install Debian. So I ran Debian with the simple net installer, and I installed just the basic Debian desktop, which is GNOME. So there's the Debian desktop GNOME, and we can install GNOME too, go figure. But then what you're going to want to do is you just simply change your sources. So this is not a newbie thing to do. This is a little bit more advanced, but if you're ready for a little bit more advanced Linuxy stuff, then this article over here at Linux Config is an excellent article to show you how to do this. So what we're going to do is you install Debian, and then what you want to do is you need to go into your sources file, which is an etc apt and sources. And inside of here, you're going to find a file. We're going to look at what I finally changed this file to. And what you're going to do is you're going to change this from Buster main. And I went ahead and did Buster main, or I did, excuse me, Sid main contrib non-free Sid main. So of course, this guy here is just the basic repos. You also, in their instruction, we're also going to install the testing, because there's going to be a little bit of back and forth. Sometimes something is goofy in one of them, not in the other. And then you set up a preferences tab. So if there's a conflict between these two sources, it's always going to go with your Sid before your testing. Testing is a little bit more stable. If something is crazy unstable, they mark it as such, and it will default to the testing version. That gives us a little bit more stable of a system. Now, the very first time I did this, I did do the dist upgrade, even though it says don't do this. You don't want to do this on a regular basis, But since I was going from Debian to Sid, from Buster to Sid, I went ahead and did the dist upgrade and just verified everything worked, and indeed it did. After I restarted the system, because a whole lot of things went kapooies all over the place. But once I got it restarted, then we were good to go. Now I just need to do my basic updates, not your distribution upgrade. So if you're new to Linux, apt dist upgrade is going to change your distribution to the next full version up. Not all distros support that, but those that do, this is how you do it. If you just do your apt upgrade, it upgrades the packages. All you're going to want to do is change the packages. So with that change in place, you now have a rolling Debian. So now I have a rolling ArchLinux and I have a rolling Debian on my system. So the question is, which one of these guys happens to be better? Let's go ahead and start in with our ArchLinux, and we'll go ahead and poke around with that a little bit. And then we'll go ahead and have a look at Debian after that. All right, so here's our basic login screen, and we're just going to go ahead and click into here and enter my super secret password. That's definitely not 123. And hopefully it will give us a full screen login, which indeed it does. So here is the basic default Arch. We did not do anything else once it is installed. And so the first thing, let's go ahead and check chest. Wow, interesting. Let's go ahead and check all of our settings and such. Let's go down and have a look at the about. So we are running ArchLinux. We are, these systems should be set up with the exact same configurations, except one of them might have a bigger hard drive. Sorry about that. We have ArchLinux. We have a rolling ArchLinux. We're using 3.36.3 windowing system. We are on Wayland. We have Oracle virtualization. And now over here, it just booted up our GNOME Software Center, which is kind of the default here for GNOME. But one of the challenges we have on Arch is that really the only thing in here is Flatpaks. The good news is we have Flatpaks installed on this out of the box. The bad news is nothing else is here. So if you are looking for a GUI package manager, you are not going to be able to find it over here. I'm sure it may be possible to add Pacman to this, or you can, of course, just add a separate GUI installer like Pamuk or something. You could install that, and that should work for you. I was not, today I spent about half an hour looking for documentation on how to add any basic Arch support to the GNOME Software Center. So if that exists, I don't know how to do that. All right, before we jump on over to Debian, in the comments on the live show here, somebody did actually point me to this proper software. I was looking everywhere for this package, and nobody was talking about it. But install GNOME Software Package Kit plugin, and then you go ahead and reboot the system. And now after I did that, now my Software Center for GNOME does actually contain all of the packages. So now if I search for Kden Live, it's giving me the single option, but note my source up here. So the default's kind of the flat hub. I can come down here and I can choose other packages as well. So this one's the repository from the extra repository. So of course you can go ahead and check this under software repositories and confirm. So here's the flat hub. We have extra, we have core, and we have community. So just running that one software package is going to give you the full support for the GNOME Software Center in Arch as well. I don't know if htop is installed on any of these guys. Let's go ahead and have a look. And it is not. I did have to add sudo to this. Of course, Debian sudo wouldn't work either because I'm not in the sudo group. So on that one, I would just have to drop to the super user. So let's do pacman s and htop. So I am going to have to install any software or anything using the terminal on this, unless I wanted to go ahead and install any form of package manager here. We are running here on Arch 876 megabytes running GNOME, which honestly is not all that bad for running GNOME. It does not seem like it is slow or laggy at all. You can kind of see how quickly things are jumping around. Very, very nice out of the box experience. So That's working just fine. Let's see if it actually finds my network. I didn't even check if my network is working. I did set up Samba, so it should. There you go. So there's my NAS. So it does find all my NAS easily out of the box. Software installed on Arch. Now, some of this isn't necessarily Arch, but the GNOME desktop on Arch. It does install a lot of GNOME software. Hey, we got boxes. We got GNOME books. We've got builders. We have the calendars, the contacts. We have Evolution, my favorite Linux email client. We got Sudoku, recipes, nibbles, bunch of stuff that I'd probably want to uninstall if I were actually using this as a real distro. We have just our basic GNOME web application, and that's really about it. So as far as install, updating things, the install with Arch ranges from very simple. If you're using something like Endeavor, might actually get you a functioning package manager out of the box. If you're doing the pure Arch way or using a script like ArchFi, you're not going to have a GUI package installer. But if you're doing Arch, you may not even want that. I don't know. You let me know if that's something you would want. All right, so here is just some of the backgrounds that we have available to us. Very nice. So we do have a good functioning system. This is actually really laggy. I'm not sure what's up with this. All of a sudden it got a little laggy with that setup, but that's really the only thing that was getting laggy on me. So there we have it. As far as, oh, you know what? Let's go ahead and I want to show you just if you're looking up individual packages. Let's do sudo pacman ss is going to search. So here you can see we're running the absolute latest version of Kdenlive would be in here because this is Arch. Absolutely everything is going to be the latest. A software package I will be doing some reviews on soon because people keep on asking me about them is some of the Bible software. So this is 2.11-2. 2.1. This is actually, in my opinion, the best version of this Bible study tool. There is actually a version in the Flatpaks, but in the Flatpak version, it's giving us a release candidate and not the final one, and it's like the first release candidate, and it really sucks. So if we go ahead and click on this guy here, you should see that it's giving us the 3.0.0 underscore release candidate 1. I think this is actually an error in the company, but whatever that happens to be. So you can actually kind of see, what we have inside of here. Overall, not a bad system. It works really nice, especially being GNOME, but of course GNOME 3.36, certainly it does get that way. Why to use GNOME? Once again, because that's the default in Debian. So let's go ahead and have a look at Debian Sid and see how that looks. All right, so here we are on the Debian desktop. So let's jump on over to settings and have a look at what we have down here. So we are already down under about. We're running Debian, and here you can see it's running, it says Bullseye/Sid. I think Bullseye is like the next release/Sid. So Bullseye is what the testing gets us. Sid is what the Sid gets us, of course. We're running GNOME 3.36.3, so pretty much the exact same system settings as we had on the other one. Although I will note that this one does feel a lot more sluggish. Out of the box, we do actually have everything working for the Software Center right out of the box. So we didn't have to mess with any of that. Let's go ahead and have a look at our software repositories here. This is very slow and sluggish. It really is. So here it's just kind of pulls up our basic software and updates so you can see our testing and our SID. Let's go ahead and see what we have as far as our HTOP is concerned. So this one I'm not in the, I don't know, I might be in the sudo group. I think I did actually add me to the sudo group. So let's do sudo apt install htop. Enter my super secret password. Oh, Debian is not in the sudo users. All right, fine. So in that case, we're just going to do su to drop to that. Now I can just apt install htop. Exit out of there and htop. And so this one's actually running just a little bit heavier, about 100 megabytes heavier than the Arch version was running. So you can tell though, I don't know if you can tell, I can definitely tell, it is definitely a lot more sluggish. As far as software installed, there's a little bit fewer junk programs on here. There are still a few games and stuff. We do have the LibreOffice suite installed here, which we did not have installed by default on the other one. We do have Firefox here versus the GNOME Web. Most of the other things are fairly similar. Now, the LibreOffice is going to be version 6.1. There is a way to update that. We do have GNOME tweaks here by default. I did not actually get a chance to check if that is installed on Arch or not. Other than that, the theming it's GNOME. There really is no theming, but everything else here looks fairly the same. Let's just see how these look. So pretty much the same theming. That's what we would expect. Similar packages installed. I would say of the two, Sid is definitely a lot easier to get up and running. There are, of course, the scripts for Arch. But even the scripts for Arch, you do have to kind of know a little bit more about what you're doing. Whereas the net installer for Debian is certainly a little bit more user-friendly, although still not as user-friendly as dropping a Linux Mint ISO in there and installing with that. The one thing I'm going to go ahead and check here is, let's see if I can log out, and I want to see if I can log in under X and see if that is an option for me. And it looks as though... okay, down here. Okay, so let's go GNOME on X. Let's see if this gives me a better user experience. I have found that Wayland on virtual machines is oftentimes very not snappy. Gonna open stuff up here. So it is actually quite a bit snappier here when we're on X, which might just be a function more of the virtual machine than anything else. So there we have it. As far as which one's going to be better, let's go ahead and go into the terminal. Now let's not worry about the terminal. I can't remember exactly if I need to drop down to root or not on that. So no. Go to Software Center. Let's go ahead and look up a couple of those applications that we did earlier. Let's do Kdenlive. All right, so Kdenlive from the repos, same exact version, which is what we had expected. Of course, it's pulling from both versions there. The other application we looked at on the other one is this one. Should be looking at version 2.11, so we are. So it looks like all the software is going to be the same. So the two versions are going to be the same. You just have a couple of fundamental differences between the two. One of these is the ease to install. If you're doing something for Arch, if you're doing something like Arch Labs or Endeavor or ArchLinux, Arch is actually pretty easy to install. Versus Debian Sid, you're going to have to install Debian and then you're going to have to change the repositories. Although in the comments here while I was recording this, some people did say there is a download for Sid. I was just not finding it, and I was not even finding a reference to it. Even according to the Debian's documentation, you install the latest testing and then you change the repos to say Sid. So Debian is going to be a little bit harder to install there. Now, if you're going with the pure Arch without anything else, Debian is going to be easier than Arch. Out of the box experience, they're fairly similar. Here on the virtual machine, Debian did not work quite as well. That is a Wayland on Debian type thing I often see. And so I'm not super concerned about that. I'd want to test both of these on real hardware to make that final determination. Software packages are similar, similar versions. Everything is going to be rolling on both distributions. So it's going to boil down to, do you want to use Pacman or do you want to use apt? That's what it is. Now, there's one more point I did not clarify in the rest of the video, and that is this. If you're talking about wanting to run rolling in a production environment, Arch is going to be your better choice because, according to Debian's documentation, the security updates do not get pushed out to SID nearly as quickly as they get pushed out to your mainline Debian Debian, or as quickly as they get pushed out to Arch. If there is a security update, some big security vulnerability, Arch rolls that out much quicker than does Debian. Because in Debian, the problem is to get this guy working, you actually have to turn off the security updates channel, and they will get the security updates into SID. They just don't prioritize it because it's not to be used for a rolling system. So if you are talking about a pure production system and security is of utmost importance, Arch is actually going to be better for you. But if it's just a standard beater machine, surfing the web, doing basic generic stuff that's not a mission critical machine, it's going to depend. Do you want to use Pacman, which you go with Arch, or do you want to use apt, which you go with Debian? So those are my take about these two distros on this Distro Wars. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below.